If you'd have told me 10 years ago that I'd be tired of open world games, I'd have said you obviously didn't know me. But here we are in 2017, and I find myself hoping for more linear games. Growing up, I played a lot of Driver 3, particularly the Take a Ride mode. This mode allowed you to drive around, get in police chases, shoot at a few bad guys scattered around the map, and not much else. I've always been one to make my own fun in video games, and I think a lot of that came from these early years. Around this time, I'd heard whispers of this game called Grand Theft Auto from some of my friends. A game that promised tons of freedom, all set in what was called an open world. This concept had me excited, but not being of age, I never got GTA. So I continued to play around in Driver 3 and still had a ton of fun. One fateful day, I found a game called Mercenaries Playground of Destruction. This game was rated teen, promised an open world map, and offered the ability to drive or fly any vehicle in the game. Needless to say, I loved the game and sank many an hour into playing it. As a side note, Mercenaries is actually the game that got me into gaming and its culture. I started reading a lot of game news and I closely followed the development of the sequel, World in Flames, another game I loved, and the developer, Pandemic, a company that will always have a special place in my heart. Mercenaries ignited my love of open world games, soon after being fueled by games such as Grand Theft Auto 4, and even more so by Red Dead Redemption. Many of my favorite games are open world. In fact, I've loved several of the games that came out this year, Horizon Zero Dawn particularly. But the number of open world games recently has made the idea a bit tired and overused. There have been a lot of open world games this year. A lot. Horizon Zero Dawn, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Middle-earth Shadow of War, Ghost Recon Wildlands, Agents of Mayhem, Elex, Sniper Ghost Warrior 3, Need for Speed Payback, Gravity Rush 2, Assassin's Creed Origins. I could go on and on. While I enjoyed a good number of these games, it gets a little tiring running around in open world, doing main missions, side missions, collecting things, leveling up, climbing towers, or any number of common open world game activities. It feels like some of these games added an open world to add another buzzword to their promotional repertoire. Many of these games had stories that I couldn't care less about, and they all had varying levels of craftsmanship shown in the worlds that you're set into. While I was likely never going to care too much about the story of Ghost Recon, setting a game in a wide open world ensured it. I had a ton of fun exploring and shooting bad guys, but at times it felt a little baffling and overwhelming just how big the world was. Exploring these worlds can be a ton of fun and really interesting, especially in the case of Assassin's Creed, but sometimes it feels like busy work doing the same things you've done, just in a different location. Just because there's a big world and a lot of things to do, does not mean that all of them are fun to do, or at least fun to do for the millionth time. The way developers have been jumping into open world games has made them a bit dry. I'd love to see more linear games, or maybe just provide a little more innovation to the open worlds. Some of my other favorite games are games like The Last of Us and the Uncharted series. The Last of Us showcases how a game can feel wide open and ready to be explored, but is subtly guiding players through a linear sequence. It's all a matter of clever level design and keeping the player engaged with the world that is around them. This more focused experience can result in a world that feels more alive, more connected, and in a higher quality story. Open world games so often can lead to a story that feels disjointed, unfocused, or uninteresting. Maybe it's slightly different with The Elder Scrolls Oblivion, but I can certainly tell you I played that game a lot and never even got halfway through the main storyline. This year's Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, was an incredible game that opted for a linear route. I've loved that game so far, with its more wide linear levels and all its Nazi shooting action. And so far it's managed to tell a great story filled with interesting characters and some genuinely awesome moments. Moments that would not have been possible in an open world format. The focus provided by linear levels allows for a more tailored experience. I can't imagine Resident Evil 7 being quite as terrifying were things not as meticulously planned out as they were. Those Call of Duty moments with big set pieces wouldn't feel nearly as impactful were they not specifically set up as they were. Uncharted's visual progression wouldn't be nearly as interesting if it was merely a matter of moving from one location to the next. And The Last of Us might never have been so emotional were it not filled with those little lovingly crafted moments that build that relationship between Joel and Ellie. Linear games have a lot of merit, and I can't imagine a world deprived of the highly crafted stories that they can tell and the moments they can create.